Tonight, for your viewing pleasure, we have prepared a FilmSpeak video essay, handcrafted to accompany your viewing of The Menu, a 2022 film which has its hand right on the pulse of everything wrong with passionless art. You will learn such things as how to respect artists, how to fill your palate with love, and how to look as good as Ralph Fiennes in a chef outfit. Just kidding, no one can look as good as Ralph Fiennes in a chef outfit. The man just has style out of this world, let's be real. The series Chef's Table gives you great portraits of the psychology of a variety of different chefs around the world, and their obsession with getting dishes right, the control they need to have. They're essentially performing at these high-end restaurants, not too dissimilar to actors in the theater, obsessing over trying to get things just right. And the frustration comes out of the clientele who aren't even fully appreciating the art in front of them. They're overly critical before they've even received the full experience. They aren't tasting the food, they don't really care about the overall performance, and that's where the frustration and anger starts to set in. That's where the emotional coldness of Chef Slowik's dishes stems from versus the warmth and comfort of a delicious cheeseburger. Slowik is chasing after perfection, after absolute satisfaction from his customers, and it's damn near impossible, especially in such elitist circles. It's like an extensive theater run, but it's a theater run that's unending. Night after night, these restaurants have to perform at such a high level, and there's a certain level that can never be satiated. There's always the next level, and the next level. There's always something, the impossibility of perfection. Though we can see the art, we can witness master chefs creating beautiful dishes that in our wildest dreams we could never even imagine creating, we remain transfixed on the minor details. It's funny because for as obsessed with Chef's Table and the art form as Nicholas Holtz Tyler is, he simply doesn't get it. He's hyper-fixated on the details in the process, but unlike the great chefs, he doesn't understand that they have to step back and allow inspiration to fill their bodies and soul. Just like the guests at Hawthorne, you want to have a truly perfect experience with everything. And with today's sponsor, Raycon, you can give that Michelin star to your ears. Raycons, unlike dining at Hawthorne, are a great thing for everyone. Not some weird exclusive just for the elite, but they sure feel like they should be. With Raycon's everyday earbuds, you can look, feel, and sound better than ever. With their optimized gel tips, you get the perfect in-ear fit. These earbuds are so comfortable and they will not budge. Trust me, I've tried. I mean, these earbuds feel like a perfect cheeseburger crafted just for you. They have 3 customizable sound profiles that allow you to listen just the way you want to. And with the earbud tap features, you can feel like a member of the elite, swiping through songs, accepting calls, and more without even having to pick up your phone. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/filmspeak to get 15% off your Raycon purchase. That's buyraycon.com/filmspeak for 15% off your order, and thank you so much to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Given the increase in popularity of the culinary arts, a movie that satirizes the mainstream obsession with being a part of foodie high society is just downright hilarious. I mean, the presentation and price of these experiences is just absurd, and what's funnier is the chefs know it's ridiculous, and that's almost kind of the point. It's a way for them as artists to get back at the wealthy elites, the status chasers, Wall Street bros, Hollywood, and philanderers who only appreciated them once they've achieved their status, after they've been deemed desirable, after their food has been classified as desirable. This sort of transcends the food industry, but it is arguably the best backdrop for a story like this because it is so clear and theatrical. The service industry is constantly beaten down and abused for the amusement of the elite, and even fetishized by foodies like Nicholas Holt's character, which is just as bad because they aren't seen as people. Their service isn't respected. Just look at how he treats Fiennes compared to Anya Taylor-Joy. And then suddenly, when they become something of importance, of a big deal, there's a yearning to taste the exclusivity of the whole thing. They want to feel like they're participating in something lauded and private to only the top 1%. What The Menu does so well is it showcases the desire for the elite to experience the exclusivity of fine dining, certainly fine dining at that, and then it says, okay, you're here, you're our guest, we told you about the experience and you agreed, so here it is. And then it turns out to not quite be what they were expecting, and they retort. They act like petulant children. They begin to utilize their status as a means to either attempt to get what they want or belittle the servant, remind them of their place in the food chain, even though it's the service provider who's in control. It shows that the respect and admiration they all had for them isn't necessarily authentic. It's not honest. Again, it's fetishizing an art form, an industry, an occupation, boiling it down to something purely transactional and devoid of skill or creativity. It's a film that exposes the elite for who they are and their insatiable need to have absolute control over everything. The irony of this situation, though, is that these chefs have also crafted an environment where their control is key. That insatiability of the customers transfers over to the insatiable pursuit of perfection from the chef, which then trickles down into the rest of the kitchen staff. Everyone in the kitchen is now in pursuit of impressing the head chef, of impressing Slowik. There's an almost cult-like devotion from them. He's got them wound so tight they could snap at any moment. They sort of live or die by his praise or criticism. They're in this weird sort of purgatory where the head chef is chasing perfection he will never attain, and then the kitchen staff are chasing the exact same thing in order to impress Slowik and advance their careers, and then the guests are also expecting perfection because of the high price tag, but they continuously pick apart the dishes served to them and degrade the art form. It's just this vicious cycle. The film has a great appreciation for the food, and these creations are objects of art, but at the same time, they're just not fun to eat. And that's where Mylod and the writers shimmy their satirical wedge in. That initial desire to become a part of the 1%, that loss of passion to gain status at the loss of creative independence is reflected back on everything and was a surprisingly big theme in 2022 filmmaking as a whole. Ralph Fiennes has described his character as a man from humble beginnings who made himself into something else. He has a gift for cooking, has an instinct for food. From a young age, he's loved preparing food, loved the ritual of making food and sharing it with people in quite an attractive, humanistic way. The celebration of food is something he recognizes is an important aspect in our life, even in the simplest meals. His talent has got him to this place of fame, wealth, and renown, and it's how power and influence can corrupt people, and somehow it's twisted his own sense of himself, and at some deep level, he knows it. Hence the hidden room with his old memories and newspaper clippings of him being a burger cook. He's a lost soul suffering from a supreme narcissistic disorder. There's a sense of self-loathing at the heart of the character. You get some insight into how he feels about the service industry, where you're serving people something of real quality that they don't really appreciate. They feel their appreciation is shown through the size of the check they're paying at the end, i.e. the rich people who frequented Hawthorne a bunch. When Slowik asks them to name one meal that they've had here, and they can't name a single one, that not only breaks the chef, but it insults him to no end.
It wasn't cod, you donkey. It was halibut.
What does it matter?
It matters to the halibut, Mrs. Leebrand, and to the artist whose work turns to shit inside your gut.
He believes that he's really offering something and people just look at it as a status thing, a box they can tick off on the list of restaurants they've been to. At the same time, he himself is guilty too of creating that kind of venue. As Fiennes himself puts it, he's in this psychic double bind. He's created the high-end restaurant for those people whom he despises. In that sense, he's lost. He's bought into fame, celebrity, extreme higher-end status, cult status, and deep down, he knows it's not right, but he's lost in it, and that's why he's gone mad. Similar to a lot of 2022 films, it's spectacle at the cost of the soul. Slowik is fully consumed by the fame and fortune, and it's caused him to forget his love of food. He's making art that he hates for people who hate it, and so there's no love, no heat, no passion to be found in his dishes, even though they are masterfully beautiful pieces of art that tell a tragic story of an artist in pain fed up with the culture of high society. Even Fiennes' costume for Slowik, his chef's attire, is pure, white, blank, almost priest-like, showing his sole devotion to the art of the meal. I think Fiennes called it monk-like. Of course, this cycle has a wrench thrown into it when it's revealed that Anya Taylor-Joy's character, Margot, isn't from this elite class. She's a fellow service worker in a different field. She knows what it's like to be mistreated. Margot is the only one who actually tastes the food, and she's like, I mean, come on guys, y'all are overhyping it. You're worshiping it solely because you're told it's elite. That doesn't inherently make it better. By aping the style of shows like Chef's Table and the myriad of other Netflix and Food Network cooking shows that seek to strip away the magic of the art form, it adds to the dark humor of it all and makes the commentary even more effective. It also sort of shows the lack of respect the profession is given. I mean, yeah, it's an art form many people admire and wish they could do themselves and think they could do themselves, and I think that's part of where the fetishization comes from. It also shows that creative fulfillment isn't something that's necessarily determined by one's place at the top of an industry. That can be fulfilling to some people, but being a part of high society isn't necessarily as desirable as you might think, especially considering the snobbery of your audience, your consumers, your clientele. It causes you to forget what real food is like, what most people find damn good cooking, and just what flat out tastes good. It's easy to get lost in the pretentiousness of high society, to bend to their whims and try everything to satisfy them. Fiennes gets more satisfaction from Anya Taylor-Joy requesting he make her a good old-fashioned cheeseburger done to perfection than he does the rest of the meal. He's almost creating out of spite than he is necessarily passion and love, and in the food industry, just like the sex industry that Margot is a part of, you can literally taste the difference. It's important for Fiennes to feel alive at the end before he meets his fate. I will say the ending is a bit puzzling. It doesn't necessarily line up with the change Margot enacts in him, but I guess it's more so about the fact that he's already gone too far down the path to turn back and has no choice but to be consumed with the people who robbed him of his passion. Obviously, there are chefs that actually do revel in the art of high cuisine, and I don't think this film takes anything away from them, especially when Tyler attempts to cook his own dish. It's a nice jab at the normies oversimplifying the job of an artist. It's the same thing with people who criticize filmmakers, authors, musicians. If it doesn't come from a critic worth their weight, it's often from a place of armchair quarterbacking. They may know all the methods, the facts, the processes, they may know everything about the person creating, but until they actually go out and attempt to do the damn thing, all of that knowledge is better suited at a Wednesday trivia night at your local pub. Tyler is just the guy who's a tryhard, thinking he's part of a crew he isn't, thinks he's intellectually superior because he's studied the craft, which just makes his humiliation all the better. He's a know-it-all loser who degrades women and condescends anyone who doesn't agree with him and his opinion of Slowik's food, or really just food in general, and yet he uses phrases like foodie, which is so low class and lame. I mean, on the topic of fetishization, you almost get the sense that he does that to Margot. He's with her because she said yes, and he thinks that she's cool. But ultimately, none of the cool girls that Tyler wanted to go to this island with said yes to going with him, or really paid him any mind in school or what have you, and he had to pay for a companion, pay for comfort, both in the food sense and in an intimate sense. He assumes it's because he wasn't popular or whatever, but really, it's because he's so damn off-putting. Also, it's hilarious how Tyler treats anyone who isn't Chef Slowik as inferior, like he could do their job, knows exactly what and how they do what they do. It's interesting how he's obsessed with the assistant chef knowing his name without mentioning it, and all Margot notices is how Tyler never asked what his name was, never took the time to acknowledge the individual preparing his meals, serving him. He's beneath him.
I mean, the attention to detail, it's like, fuck. He knew my name, babe.
Yeah, I noticed you didn't ask his name.
Yeah, well, you know.
The first course is hilarious. Not only are the filmmakers mocking the very nature of fine dining and how all of this excess is on a plate for a single scallop, but also the different reactions. Tyler is just kind of regurgitating what he's been told, and yet also obsessing over it to a point where he's not even tasting the food. The critic is too busy being pretentious and trying to find the flaws or descriptors to really even taste what it is she's having. It's more of a vanity thing. The actor is just like, it's good, very normal response, but also one that's because he's only here for his latest show. Isn't really interested in processing what it is he's consuming, since in the show, he'll just BS it anyways, faking his reaction in order to get his Emmy and get his career back on track, you know, the whole faking the orgasm thing. The douchey Wall Street bros also don't get it. They call it otter food, say they've had food just as good at home from their private chefs. It's not really an experience for them, more of a disposable way for them to spend money, more about saying they've been there to flaunt their money and exclusivity. Then there's the couple who's been there before. They insult the dish based on looks and then move on discussing their marital problems and other stuff, not even really savoring or tasting the meal. And now we move into the bread course of the meal. That whole jab is hilarious. Slowik describes bread as a peasant dish, the food of the common man. With these elitists not being common man, they will get none. Absolutely great. And yet still, these elitists complain about the fact that they aren't getting bread. At first they're like, haha, very funny, very clever. They don't even realize they're being insulted to their faces. They just write it off as next level or clever or whatever. I mean, they literally go to a restaurant known for their bread and are served no bread, and then the critic starts picking apart the dipping sides and criticizing the emulsion or whatever, almost to knock it down, and not even addressing the lack of bread. It's just the fucking dipping sauce. Just further emphasizing the point that these clowns are missing what Slowik is doing. And then, as the critic continues to pick and pry and complain about whatever the hell is there, they bring out the massive dish of broken emulsion. Again, she's missing the point. The emulsion is supposed to be that way. And this brings us back to Margot, the only one with the common sense to be like, you guys do realize he's just insulting you, knowing you'll lap it up, and so you are. Historical allegories or whatever BS he's trying to tell with the food doesn't matter. You go to a restaurant and they don't give you food. That's not how it works. And then Tyler just goes off waxing poetic about the genius of Slowik, again, not even really taking in what's in front of him, more trying to outsmart the chef and figure out the theme of the meal instead of actually enjoying it. The funniest part about this whole bread section, outside of the sheer fact that it is the breadless bread dish, is this elite food critic going on about how she makes her own bread, peasant style. Isn't that quaint? With yeast from apples, trying to relate it to a lower class she's never been a part of, or again, fetishizing a type of food that some people actually depend on for a meal. The douche bros not getting their way and threatening with status and work connections as if they're above the rules or the meal they agreed to.
You will eat less than you desire and more than you deserve.
This quote from then on becomes more evident in how this meal was prepared to tear down these people, to tear down their societal constructs which have given them their status and power. The next course is
Taco night. Oh, yeah. Taco Tuesday.
an experience from poverty, low-income family with domestic problems, and it's all just trivial to these people. It's just another experience they can consume. It's quaint or whatever. The taco is one of Hawthorne's signature dishes, and they change their menu constantly even though this remains a staple. It's what the critic once said put Slowik on the map. But now he's put a bit of a jaded twist on it that these people have caused him to have. You have to pour your blood, sweat, and tears into a craft when you make it, and here he's basically saying, consume my trauma, my experiences for your pleasure. Why don't you also consume some of your own? As he prints their sins on the tortillas. These guests aren't better than him. They're just like him, even if they feel otherwise. Margot assumes that Slowik is another one of the elite, that he wants to know who she is so he can make fun of her, judge her for coming from Nebraska and poverty, but he's not interested in that. He comes from a similar small-town background, even if he's forgotten it a bit. He wants to know if she's with the kitchen or the guests. This is really interesting because not only are we peeling back the layers on Slowik and his plan, but it also sort of points to the fact that these top chefs didn't necessarily get there by having all the money in the world. Some did, maybe, but many of them are small-town common people who love food and love creating with food, which is why it's ironic when they suddenly become these massive celebrities and they're treated differently, expected to make different food, assimilate with the 1%, buy into the fame and celebrity as Ray Fiennes previously mentioned. That's not who they are, and yet their entire career sort of rests on that. It's this interesting dichotomy between host and guest, the server and the paying customer.
Babe, please don't smoke. It'll kill your palate.
Then my palate will die happy.
I know these are the first lines in the film, but this is really the whole point of the movie. People doing things for status reasons because it's what they think they should be doing or how they should be consuming. I mean, it's like fucking wine tasting, right? You go to a winery and they literally tell you, oh, you get a bit of this and a bit of that and so on and so forth, and the customer goes, oh yeah, you know what, I do get that. When in actuality, most people haven't the slightest clue of what they're tasting until you tell them. They aren't sophisticated, they're just trying to act like it. It's better to consume what you enjoy, what makes you happy, than spending your time trying to bend over backwards, forcing yourself to like things you may not, just to feel like you belong in high society. The battle between arts and the artists is best shown in the course simply known as The Mess. This is such a great course because it speaks to the culinary students that long for the status of these top chefs without understanding why they are the best of the best. You can study, pay all this money, go to culinary school, get cooking down to an exact science and be good. Very good, but not great. Because the one thing missing is soul. The art has to have soul. The meal has to have soul, has to have passion, creativity. It's not about aping those who've come before, going to the best culinary schools, or worshiping at the feet of the masters as seen with Tyler. It's about cooking what makes you happy and allowing that love to pour into the dish so that the customer can feel as though you care, as though you put your heart and soul into something. If you're only chasing the superficiality of the culinary arts, you'll never become great. And with how popularized cooking shows and just food shit in general has become, more people go into it because they want the lifestyle, the prestige, the job, the talent.
Jeremy has forsaken everything to achieve his goals. Like mine, his life is pressure. And even when all goes right and the food is perfect, and the customers are happy, and the critics are too, there is no way to avoid the mess.
There's also this aspect too, the less glamorous, horrible side of the profession. Everyone is judging you. You live on a razor's edge. Your next dish could destroy you, and yet all you have to do is keep making sacrifices to please people because in this industry, people expect perfection, especially in high dining, the environment that pushes someone to depression and despair. No one wants this life. It's fucking hell, which is why the passion and love has to be there. Otherwise, you'll go mad. You'll hate it. In a way, the whole concept of The Mess is the idea that a chef will never be great because he's never allowed to be.
Every dish you've served tonight has been some intellectual exercise rather than something you want to sit and enjoy. You're a chef. Your single purpose on this earth is to serve people food that they might actually like, and you have failed. You failed, and you've bored me. And the worst part is, I'm still fucking hungry.
This whole exchange between Margot and Chef Slowik is the movie. Obviously, Margot is baiting Slowik, but she's baiting him because she saw the Employee of the Month plaque in his office, a cherished memory of when he was making food for people who actually enjoy it and was happy. He was cooking with passion and love. Moving into high society dining has completely changed him. The snooty, careless clientele has jaded him, and it's clearly affected his cooking, and Margot knows this. He's created an entire island and crew of chefs that are obsessively devoted to crafting the perfect meal when the perfect meal doesn't exist. And that clientele wouldn't even be able to tell if it did because they suck. They don't appreciate the craft. They'll always find something to pick apart with it. Love and obsession are not the same thing. It's a film that recognizes the shortness of life and advocates for doing what makes you happy, watching what makes you happy, creating what makes you happy, cooking and eating what makes you happy. Enjoy the meal, savor it, taste every part of it. Don't just blindly consume something if you don't like it. It's fair to recognize which tastes are for certain people. We're all individuals with different interests and taste buds. Cater to those. Don't do something because it's elite or exclusive. Don't force yourself to eat a meal you don't like or be a part of something, a culture you don't believe in. It doesn't make you better. It doesn't make you more cultured or desirable. It just makes you shallow.